Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Nile.
Whoa, who's this talking?
So he was locked out. Last we saw Kyle, he was locked out of the apartment.
Banging on the door,
Yeah.
trying to get in.
What progress has he made?
He's still out there.
And he got a little tired. We do slip those liquid IV pouches under, the drunk man's Capri Sun underneath the door, just occasionally to keep his electrolytes up.
If he's cold, if you're cold, he's cold.
True.
Let him in.
Especially with the fact that our hallway has been dark the last day or so. It's he's having a bad time out there.
I know, but he has to earn it.
Truly.
I'm sorry. This is my podcast now.
So welcome to It Gets Weird. This week, Jules is filling in for co-host Kyle. And
He will be back, everyone.
Yes.
He will be back. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to keep shepherding you through. I know I'm a poor substitute for Kyle, but he'll be back soon.
Yeah. So this week, what's really funny is I promise everyone listening, I did start doing the research for this episode before it was going to be for Jules. Just the way all the timing worked out. This was not intended to be a Jules episode, but it's kind of fitting with the You and Me episode that already exists, where we did the episode on time slips.
Yes, and you freaked my bean,
I
and
did.
I had an existential crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not doing time slips today, but we are doing something that I think is in a similar wheelhouse. Today we're going to talk about the phenomenon of disappearing towns.
Ooh, okay, cool.
So, there's a lot of ways that could be interpreted, and you better believe me trying to search shit for this episode. I found a lot of different ways that can be interpreted.
This will be a nice little sister episode, though, because the time slips episode had a whole thing about a town, right?
Yeah.
There was like a whole thing about a village.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They went back in time into
Check
a
out
village,
time
yeah.
slips. Niall's gonna link the episode below.
Oh yeah, we're really good at following through with stuff like that.
Yep.
So this week, missing towns.
You should make a playlist of all the great episodes that I'm on, because that's what everybody needs.
I did find out, and I haven't gone back and done this, but I'm going to do it going forward. Going forward, there will be a Jules tag on our Patreon, so you can just. I need to go back and retroactively add it, maybe, but for going forward, I'm going to try to start marking at least the recurring guests, so you can. If that'll be an extra feature for that pushes people to our Patreon.
Yeah, pay those $2 and come check out all the Jules episodes, everybody.
So, yes, like I was saying, there's a lot of different ways that can be interpreted. The concept of a ghost town, like where the buildings still exist, but the people are just gone due to economic factors, whatever. That comes up a lot when you search for this, along with stuff like Roanoke. That's kind of a mystery. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about fucking towns that existed that there is no trace of anymore. That is the phenomenon that we're talking about today.
We're talking about towns that Jason Bourne out of here.
Yes, straight up. It's like Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, but if it were town, okay, so if you mash up,
It's if Rochester just got Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah, it's like in the Cars universe, cars replace humans. It's like if towns were cars in the Cars universe, but that movie was actually Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
It's like if Denver, Colorado were Lightning McQueen.
Yeah. I'm just imagining that the little car in the crowd going, Lightning McQueen, but it's Denver, Colorado.
Ka-chow.
Ka-chow. Wow. this is we're off to a great start.
Someone photoshopped the "Welcome to Denver" sign and have it say "Ka-chow" as the slogan.
I put a lightning bolt under it.
Mm-hmm.
So Jules, today I want to start by talking about a town known as Doveland, Wisconsin.
Not real. Oh, were you quizzing me?
Spoilers. Spoilers.
Not a real place. Doveland, is that what you said?
Doveland,
Yeah.
like the bird and land.
Mm-hmm.
So Doveland, Wisconsin is a small town that supposedly, if the rumors are to be believed, disappeared sometime during the 1990s. This
Great.
place existed
Only-
up until...
Only 90s kids will remember Doveland.
Exactly, yeah. And that date is important for something later on that we're going to talk about. But
We're going to get into Friends. You've all been waiting to hear the Friends discourse, and It Gets Weird is finally going to deliver.
What's fucked up is the only actual reference to Doveland, Wisconsin in a media form is an episode of Friends
It's
where they
called
talk about a layover.
the one where they go to Doveland.
Yeah. No, Doveland, Wisconsin is a town that supposedly existed. It was a small town in rural Wisconsin. However, there's no actual... this place doesn't fucking exist.
Okay, so how, if there's no trace of them or whatever now,
Mhm.
how do these things get started? Like,
Okay.
how does someone remembers going there, or like, is it a Mandela thing, or?
I'm glad you asked that question because that brings us to like the crux of this whole thing. There are a lot of ways that people think like have like a lot of like circumstantial, I guess, evidence about these disappearing towns. It's a pretty common thing. That for Doveland specifically, the things that people point to, there is a photograph that was supposedly recovered from Doveland, even though which I have here, it doesn't show you anything. It's a nice couple sitting in a booth.
That could be anywhere.
Yeah, it could be anywhere. It has there's no like "Welcome to Doveland" sign in the background or anything.
There's no guy wearing a T-shirt that says like "We are in Doveland."
Well, that is funny that you mentioned that because one of the things that people claim about about Doveland existing is various memorabilia, such as T-shirts for like a high school or just like a city,
Mm-hmm.
and also like coffee mugs and various memorabilia that you would get at like a welcome center in a city. I don't know if where you grew up had that. Where in Columbus there's one that had like fucking Chihuly sculptures and shit in it.
You're not going to trick me into saying where I grew up.
Fair.
This was a sting operation. You're trying to get me to say where I was born, and I won't do it.
Because the big reveal at the end of this episode, not to spoil it, is that the town you grew up in doesn't actually exist. It's been wiped off the face of the earth.
I will tell you the last 4 digits of my social security number and my mother's maiden name, but where I was born,
Never. So this, so the place you don't need to worry about it because the place you were born doesn't exist. Much like Doveland, Wisconsin. This whole thing, how this came to be is very interesting because as far as I can tell, it originates like one of the original posts naming anything about Doveland, Wisconsin comes from a Tumblr post. Which I showed you the Tumblr background. They had a very nice theme on their page and everything.
Aesthetic blog for
very,
sure.
very aesthetic. But it also in some ways is kind of tied to Google search results.
You telling me this is a Goncharov? Did we get Goncharov?
This might be the proto Goncharov.
Oh no. No.
But it's
actually the proto Goncharov is there's an artist on Tumblr who created a character in Adventure Time and got Tumblr to believe that it was a real character, which I love. I love Nico the cat. That's the original Goncharov.
Fair enough. This might be a location in the world of Goncharov.
Okay, great.
So
you know how much I love Goncharov.
Oh, it's so fantastic. Okay. This is the weird part of this. Well, the whole thing is in the world of weird, whatever the fuck. The thing that surprised me most about this is how this seemingly came to be. There was a Tumblr post about someone remembering, memorabilia of Doveland, Texas. I do have the full Tumblr post here in a second. But
Doveland, Wisconsin. What did I say? Texas.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's just a real place. No, I don't.
I was looking into Texas for another thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff bounced around in my brain right now. And it got to a point where people were talking about Doveland, Wisconsin merch basically on like Tumblr and social media enough because of these posts that like t-shirt websites started to make Doveland, Wisconsin shit.
Of course, because anytime it says like put this on a shirt or that's a great shirt or something, those kinds of websites just like
scrape the internet.
Yeah, they scrape for that, and then they just take the image and are like, t-shirt, we made it.
Yeah.
But so then that feeds into the whole loop because then there are t-shirts that say it. So then it makes it seem like it was a real thing in the first place, etc.
So this Tumblr post was originally posted in, I believe, 2017. So this, as far as I can tell, is the birthplace of a lot of the Doveland, Wisconsin lore. And it's on a Tumblr post on a deactivated blog called Pennsylvanian Patriot. And it says, okay, so this is just like golf rumors, where there's basically no information available online, even less than golf rumors, in fact. Supposedly there was a small town in Wisconsin called Doveland that just up and disappeared sometime in the late 1980s, early 1990s. One day the town was there, the next it wasn't. Every man, woman, and child vanished into thin air. Nobody today remembers Doveland. There is allegedly tourist memorabilia from the town that still exists, t-shirt, mugs, postcards, etc., but the town is gone. It was also removed from maps and razed by the powers that be, either to cover up what happened or out of fear that it might happen again. What's really weird is that most locals don't remember Doveland either, which is strange because in rural Wisconsin, communities are closely knit, just like every other sparsely populated area of the country. The most likely explanation is it never existed, dumbass, but let's carry on just a bit more.
This is classic Tumblr tone.
Oh, 100%. Here are the theories postulated as to where it went. The town just never existed and is just internet BS, probably sourced from and ending with x/x 4chan's X board. LARPing antics. The locals up and left due to an untenable circumstances, sickness, lack of economy, whatever. A government project or experiment went wrong and killed everyone. Then they razed it to the ground to cover their screw up. Or, most fun for me, the town fell into another dimension, or we shifted to a reality where the town had never existed. Think Mandela effect.
Yeah. Or the town was on a hellmouth.
True. Which, I mean, that kind of works for just like a hellmouth puts you in another dimension, which is kind of what you can think of as like a splinter
That's
thing.
True. That's true.
Searching for Doveland, Wisconsin on Google only yields some old threads on X where they're just as confused as I am, but more mysteriously, 2 articles on missing people in Wisconsin. Which both those articles are posted to the Post Crescent, which is a newspaper in rural Wisconsin. I forget what town it's actually centered in. But they're basically about missing persons in Wisconsin. As far as I can tell, neither of these articles mention Doveland anywhere. And this is,
of course they don't.
This is one of the like strangest parts of like how this has spread that I'll get into in just a second. But they then go on to liken it to Roanoke, a thing called Lake Onchakuni, which is another thing. Basically, more disappeared towns, which I stayed to America for this one, but there are some international ones we could do in the future. And that is the post. This isn't where it started specifically. It does reference some X threads and stuff, which I found. I straight up. I went on the 4chan archive to try to find shit about this, and it's just straight up.
My condolences.
Yeah. So many of the posts are just straight up like, whatever. Does anyone else remember Doveland, Wisconsin? And like, that's it. Like there's.
It's just assholes on the internet who have heard this thing and so are trying to propagate that it's a real thing.
Yeah. But these 2 posts on Post Crescent, let's talk about that real quick, because these are, one of them is entitled, let's see, more than 1,000 Wisconsinites reported as missing. And the other is, who are they? Wisconsin's missing children. Now, as far as I can tell, I did go and read these. They are just articles about the overall like concept of missing children in Wisconsin. The fact that there are children that have run away, been kidnapped, whatever, and they're out there. As far as I can tell, Doveland is not anywhere in these things. But the reason why they're so linked with the Doveland, Wisconsin thing is because for a long time, when you Googled Doveland, Wisconsin missing, or even just Doveland, Wisconsin, some on the very first page on Google were these 2 articles about missing children, and including the one that straight up says 1,000 missing Wisconsinites. So basically, through just the way stuff gets spread on the internet and the fact that like people don't only read the headline of articles, It seems like the concept of this whole thing started to spread that way.
Yeah.
Now, there are other theories when it comes to like the Mandela effect and stuff, which we will talk about, but there's one other thing about this that I haven't talked about yet. And to get into that, I want to talk a little bit about some actual accounts of people who claim they remember Doveland, Wisconsin. I'm going to swear to God I'm going to stop saying Texas.
Doveland sounds like a place that would be in Texas.
It really does.
It sounds like a Texas town.
Yeah. So this is a couple notable accounts from people who have some personal recollection or tie to Doveland, Wisconsin. The first one is from a guy named Nate Allen, and he says, I just learned of all the noise surrounding Doveland, and I think I can add some insight. Doveland was a small town in Wisconsin that housed a lot of military families. My father lived there for a year or two and spoke of it occasionally. The main thing I remember is that it had to do with Project Sanguine in the early 60s. I didn't think it was X-Files type stuff, but the town was destroyed after an incident. I thought they were digging up a ton of land for something and they flooded the town or something, but this is a rehashed secondhand memory from years ago. And then there are a couple other little ones that are like, as someone who has lived in various places in Wisconsin for over 30 years and has been in the Army, never once has any single person ever mentioned Doveland. And then a response to that is, I think you make a good point, but Doveland was very real. My father used to mention it occasionally before he passed. And the only reason I remember it is because I found it ironic that a town named Doveland was populated by almost exclusively military personnel and their families. I will dig around for a shirt when back home next in early September. If I remember correctly, the town was built as part of Project Sanguine in the mid to late 60s. Maybe everyone left when the project was canceled, but I thought something went very wrong. You can only dig up that much turf for so long before you're bound to have problems. So this kind of became then tied to a thing called Project Sanguine, which is real. Project Sanguine was a real thing. I did some looking into it. There was a great source that talked about a lot of this kind of stuff that I was pulling from that I'll try to link somewhere in the description or whatever. That talks about Project Sanguine. What Project Sanguine is an ELF system, which is an extremely low frequency like transmission system. It is literally a project that the real version of it is underground places that can make very low, loud sounds, so they can try to communicate with submarines in the field.
Okay.
So it's straight up just like a special form of radios to contact submarines. And
wasn't there something like that in that Demi Lovato show you watched when they were talking about the ones in the ocean? Wasn't there something like that offshore that was messing with their...
I think so.
There was some military thing. I have a vague recollection of that because I was getting ready for work while you watched that months ago.
And man, that show was fucking weird. We did a Patreon series on Demi Lovato's UFO alien show on...
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Peacock?
that was on Patreon.
Yeah.
Anyone listening on the free feed wouldn't know about the cool Demi Lovato episode you did.
And wow, that was fucking weird.
Yeah.
Subscribe to our Patreon.
I bet
There's
listening to you and Kyle
there.
talk about those was fun as hell. I didn't get to hear any of Kyle's takes yet.
Yeah.
I should go listen to those. And so should you, dear listener. Pay your $2 now. I'm going to just keep doing that.
Yeah. So Project Sanguine was straight up just an actual Navy project to communicate with deep sea submarines. It was proposed in 1968, and it was described as the plan was to bury a gigantic grid of cables under roughly 41% of the state of Wisconsin in order to turn its bedrock into the world's largest radio antenna.
And hey, what could go wrong?
Yeah. The cables would then, with the aid of 100 underground power plants, generate extremely low frequency waves, with the end result being a system capable of surviving a nuclear attack that could send messages and orders, although not receive them, to nuclear submarines anywhere across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might look at this and say, okay, that sounds like something that they would try to do. But doesn't that sound expensive as fuck?
It sounds extremely time-consuming, expensive. Like everyone who lives in Wisconsin would come and riot at the, what do you call those meetings where people...
Town hall meetings or whatever, city hall?
They would say, no, thank you. We are not interested. We don't want to be what is it? LMF? What'd you call it?
ELF.
ELF. No, thank you.
Don't want to be no elf. No elves in Wisconsin.
There would be moms who made T-shirts that said "No elves." Yeah, for sure.
So this project never actually, in that form, it never actually went through. Oh. They did do a like reduced scope version using above ground cables that was in operation between 1989 and 2004 before the project was shut down.
But just like the way we normally do things, instead of a crazy batshit thing where you have to like
drill under 40% of Wisconsin. Yeah. The when I read that figure of it's going to be cable, like a string of cables underneath 41% of the landmass of Wisconsin, which is not a small state.
No.
That is it was like hearing those plans where it's like, oh, we're going to take the entirety of the desert in Arizona and cover it in solar panels because it could like, power the whole country or whatever. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you're just like writing off an entire state.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
like, I can't imagine that any problems would come up in the course of you trying to do that.
Yeah. So this version never came to pass. So it doesn't have anything, as far as I can tell, has nothing actually to do with a place called Doveland, Wisconsin. But that is the main theory of what happened is this ELF system that was trying to be implemented was actually done through some like secretive thing, and it fucked up the whole town and they covered it up.
What is the explanation though that these people have who are saying that it's real for why there are no buildings or whatever? Like that it was leveled by the military? Mm-hmm. That's what they're saying?
That it was like covered up because the whole thing turned in. Basically, there's a contingency of conspiracy theory world that any project that you've heard of that didn't go through is more than likely actually was completed, but in a secret black budget project.
Yeah.
So it's
which
one of those
I mean, you throw that accusation at enough military projects, and it's going to be true about 30% of them.
Mm-hmm. So because there are certain things that like we have uncovered a lot of times where some government project supposedly ended and then it just changed code name and was rebooted.
It's like not that outlandish of an accusation to throw at the U.S. military.
But it is, it's
or U.S. government in general.
It's so wide reaching. Like I, as someone who is really into the whole like deep underground military base side of conspiracy theories, which is just predicated on like the entirety of North America being strung underground with these like maglev train lines and shit, I realize that is entirely impossible, or at least largely impossible. But it's fun to think about.
Has there ever been like a Supernatural episode or some show like that about something like this? There was a town and now it's not a town. That seems like a great thing for Dean Winchester to be quipping about.
I think
that show is so much about sort of like small town America and like.
Well, until it just turns into them like trying to punch God, you know, like there's a weird power creep in the later seasons.
I swear I'm not trying to keep bringing up stuff about the Patreon, but I mean, check out the Supernatural series on the Patreon.
Check out me making Kyle watch the whole first season of Supernatural.
But doesn't it seem like something that they would do?
Oh yeah, 100%. This like,
someone comes to them and is like, I can't find my mom. The whole town isn't there.
Honestly, there should be both Supernatural and X-Files episodes about this topic.
Even Buffy, I feel like, could do an episode on something like this.
Except for the fact that, like, as far as I can tell, most of these stories didn't start to appear until, like, the 2010s.
Okay.
So many of these things are relatively modern in their, at least as far as the discussion of them is. Like, the next one that I have, which is is Urkhammer, Iowa. This town supposedly disappeared in 1928. Mm-hmm. However, the first story, the first like recorded thing of anyone talking about it online was 2015, which is a fucking wild gap if you want to try to think this is a real thing, you know? And normally I don't usually stress how much this stuff is ridiculous in the beginning of the episodes, but I like, it's such a weird gap to be like, oh, remember this town that just disappeared and no one talked about it again until 2015 when it was talked about by some random blogger. You know,
it is interesting to me though, because to me, so like that definitely firmly plants this as basically creepypasta.
Yes.
Like it's something where modern internet decided, how about we start making up towns and act like they went missing? that's kind of creepy and fun to read about and fun to like kind of try to research or whatever. And I get why people do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's straight up another one called Ashley, Kansas that is 100% like a Lovecraftian creepypasta.
Yeah.
That is the only thing there is about it, which is why I didn't go into it.
But like what's interesting to me is that but it sounds like the kind of thing where like Slender Man is so modern.
Mm-hmm.
I get how that's a modern what would it be, folktale like kind of thing.
Yeah.
It clearly was made by people,
modern urban legend.
modern people.
Yeah.
But this sounds like the kind of thing that some asshole in the 20s would do, and that there would be some record of someone saying in the 20s that there was a town in the 1910s that just disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially like it seems like the kind of thing people would sit around a fireplace and talk about. So I would think that there would be records of missing towns that are older. But no, it's just some dumb thing that a bunch of assholes in 2010 were like,
yeah. And especially, it's funny that you say that specifically because the origin of this one is so tenuous.
I shouldn't make noises like that on a podcast. That you could like, I'm not even saying like that it's offensive or something. I don't mean it in any other way except like I'm dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't want anyone to be able to isolate that I made that noise.
Yeah.
But now it's recorded.
Oh yeah, and there's
Forever.
no way to edit it. Our editing
And if
machine's
you had
broken.
headphones on, you had to just listen to me make that awful noise. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're just realizing that now that if more noise you make in the microphone get transmitted into people's ears.
Do I normally make awful noises like that?
No, only before we start recording. If there are other people in the room
To torture you.
Yeah, it is only targeted at me.
When you have your headphones on and you're checking me and Kyle's levels, we love to torture you.
Yes,
That's fun.
sure. So Urkhammer, Iowa, which is probably close to where I grew up, is, as far as I can tell, first appeared online in 2015.
But what was the street you grew up on in your first dog's name?
I honestly don't remember the name of the street in Iowa. I just don't. I probably should, but I don't.
You shouldn't say it on the
No, I'm
internet
not going to.
anyway. I'm saying when there are threads that are like, say the street you grew up on in your dog, those people are trying to steal your identity.
Oh yeah.
Don't share that shit online. I think there is a whole generation of people coming up now that don't realize that stuff like that is people trying to get you to share stuff about yourself
fair.
that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I see like Gen Zers and younger on the internet saying like what high school they go to and their mother's maiden name and shit and just giving it up. Where I'm like, no one there are no classes anymore about internet safety.
No.
You remember how much you were hounded about stuff like that when computers were brought into school and stuff? I'm assuming you had it too.
Yeah.
We were in high school around the same time. They were constantly telling me, don't use your real name, never say where you live, not even like the state. Don't give anyone your phone number, don't give anyone your address, don't say anything true about yourself.
Yep.
And when I was on like Neopets and shit, I used to pretend I was like a 35-year-old guy from Kansas. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would straight up lie. And so many young people on the internet now are like, here's everything about me.
Yeah.
And also like posting everything offensive to them in their bio so that it's like, don't message me about these things. It's like, you're basically begging to be harassed. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's your fault if someone harasses you, it's their fault. But like, if you're listening to this and you're younger than me, don't tell anyone any real things about yourself on the internet.
Yeah.
Just don't.
I agree. So tell them you're from Urkhammer, Iowa.
Yes. Tell them you're from Loveland, Wisconsin. Doveland.
Yeah.
I looked it up. The reason you were saying Texas is there's a place called Loveland, Texas.
Which there's a famous UFO. Loveland
and I was going to say it
UFO.
sounded familiar to me, I think, because of something weird. So that's why you kept saying Texas.
So this, as far as I was able to find, can be traced back to the author of a website called Strange State, who shared what he was given that seems to be a historical overview of a town that his mother had received in an email. I don't know from who, but it goes into some detail about Loveland. I'm so fucked up right now.
About Urkhammer.
About Urkhammer, Iowa. And I'm just going to just have to read this a little bit.
Nile, it's all made up and the points don't matter.
I know.
So don't worry.
We're having a real fucking Whose Line Is It Anyway episode this time. So One recalls the town of Urkhammer, Iowa during the 1920s and early 30s. For years, people passed by the bustling burg of Urkhammer without giving it a second thought. Many people even drove through it, and there are rumors that transactions took place between tourists and the pale mute Urkhammerovians. In 1928, the first ontological doubts about the town began when aerial photographs showed only empty fields where there should have been homes and streets and stores, surrounded by farms and waving fields of grain.
Wait, aerial photographs taken when?
In the 30s.
In the 30s. Okay.
Yeah. A week or so later, a lost tourist had his Marmot Speedster topped off with gasoline at the Urkhammer Esso station. Then, 2 miles beyond the town's borders, discovered that his tank was empty.
Mm-hmm.
He walked back to demand a refund from the conniving general store and the gas pump emporium, only discovered that, regardless of how far he walked, the town remained the same distance ahead of him. Fortunately,
I love shit like that. That's genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
I love touches like that.
Oh, one of my like all-time creepiest things that I've watched, and this is probably because of like I watched it when I was in high school and stuff. There's a short film that was on YouTube called No Through Road, and it's like you're driving on this like lane late at night, and you keep coming back to the same place and everything.
Yep.
That kind of shit.
It's like in the Mouths of Madness.
Yeah.
They keep kind of looping. I love
100%.
shit like that. There's also, I just watched that black and white movie I watched with my mom. I told you about it. I forget what it's called now, but it's based on an old ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
And she was describing to me that like in the story, there's a whole thing about how he sees a figure on the beach and he starts to run towards it. But no matter how fast he runs, he never gets closer to it.
Okay.
I love shit like that.
Oh, that's great.
And it's so... I'm going to tell you the name of it. And I'm going to tell you to put it in the description. I'm going to have to look it up after this.
I'm going to have to
you
start
have
keeping
3
fucking
things
notes.
to put in the
Yeah,
description.
Jesus. A motorist picked him up after an hour or two and replenished his car's fuel supply, but the man had been shaken to his core and required a prolonged sojourn in an alpine sanitarium.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there you're just having fun with words. Then in 1929, the Davenport Clarion Sun Telegraph newspaper published both stories. It led to, there wasn't a big, strong public reaction to the story because it happened it came out in the same issue as the Wall Street stock market crash.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So that means that by the time...
That's another great touch.
Mm-hmm.
Great detail.
That's a reason why people don't remember the story is because it took place on like Black Friday, you know?
This one is much... I like this one better than the first one.
Yeah.
I'm going to start rating these as if I'm talking about like the writer.
Uh-huh.
To me, these are like great creations. This is a good one.
And
if I stumbled across this when I was like 13 on the internet,
mm-hmm.
and I was on one of those websites, like a website where it's like in the late 90s, early 2000s internet, where it's all HTML and there's just like shitty JPEGs up at the top and it's all in Courier New and it's just a bunch of text, but it's like a colored background with white text. A ghost story like this on a website like that, I would be me at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
still up on the computer going like, the town, it disappeared. I would love that.
Yeah, and
it's perfect for that.
This and to add to that detail, so week 1 you have Black Friday, then week 2 was the last issue of this newspaper before it folded.
Great.
So
this is great. It really is. I, as an 11-year-old, would believe this hook, line, and sinker. I would be like, that's so scary.
Yeah.
That makes it believable to my 11-year-old mind.
And other papers would try to bring the story, supposedly, even relating the life story of a woman named Fatima Morgana, who was a school teacher and anti-saloon league activist.
Mm-hmm. Nice touch. Nice touch.
Her whole life story of living and growing up in Urkhammer, Iowa, got lost amongst all of the notes about plant closings, stockbroker suicides, and the sudden popularity of apple sellers on street corners, is what it claims.
Mm-hmm.
And even Urkhammer's own newspaper, the weekly Bugle-Picayune Advertiser, ran the now classic headline, "Rumors of our non-existence has been greatly exaggerated," for which they were sued by the estate of the late Samuel Clemens.
Now,
this is too much.
That's a bridge too far. You got too cocky with it.
Yeah.
And you are no longer... I would have read that and been like, okay.
And so at this point, like, it continues on in being basically that Urkhammer is like a literal ghost town, as in a town that is an apparition a lot of the time. And that kind of got perpetuated for the next couple of years before it just fully disappeared. When in 1932, a farmer named Phineas Bumpf went to go to the town to sell some produce, and when he got there, it was just entirely gone.
Phineas Bumpf?
Phineas Bumpf, a Huguenot immigrant farmer.
That's another great detail.
Oh, it's great.
That's a good one. The Samuel Clemens thing, that's going to piss me off.
That was too far.
Because it sucks. That is not a good detail. The rest of these details are so rich and make me picture a real place so well. And that is like, there's no fucking way that happened.
Yeah, there's even like a little story here of some skullduggery amongst some like bums and stuff, like about like this person had been accused of spending the group's hard-gotten money on illegal hooch rather than on beans and bacon, and it led to this. It's all based on like a bet of going to this town that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
like it's just
what's better than old newspapers?
It's just such fun local lore. I
love shit like that.
It's really good. And
okay, so Urkhammer's winning. Urkhammer's the best one so far.
This is straight up the only explanation for this that people have come up with. This one doesn't even get like the Mandela effect treatment. This one is just like, oh, it's an urban legend. It's a fake like creepypasta type thing. Because the first presentation of the story, even the person that published it on that site, Secret State, I think is what it was called, said that he believes the story was fictional, perhaps an email forwardable legend. Remember email forwards?
Email forwards. That's it. That it would be in the same fucking format that I'm talking about. It would be giant Courier New font.
Yeah.
With a colored background and a different colored text. There would be like moving GIFs and shit of skeletons on the edges.
Yep.
I loved reading shit like that, dude. You know how many of those, like, forward this or else you'll fucking die in your sleep tonight? The descriptions of those would scare me really bad.
Yeah.
If it was like, forward this or Jason the... What's the guy? There was like a guy with a normal human name, and it was like, he'll come through your window and kill you tonight or whatever. Those used to scare me really bad when I was a kid.
Yeah. My favorite one was like supposedly sent by a computer, and it no one can figure out where it came from because it was before there was like the full-blown internet, and somehow everyone got it. Like it was this weird... I forget the story of that. But...
I feel like there was one that I used to read. This might have just been a creepypasta. It might not be an email forward, but about a guy, he had no eyelids. That one scared me really bad. I still remember that detail, and it was like, it scared me. I was an easily scared kid though. As you know, I didn't even start watching horror movies until I was a full-blown adult.
Yeah.
Like I was a very sensitive kid, and images would stick with me for a really long time and make it really hard for me to sleep. And like not just in stuff that I saw, like stuff that I would read and then I would picture it. And that still happens to me. I have a lot of things where it's like, if something scares me, I can't close my eyes without seeing it for like weeks.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I have like, I have to really temper when I do scary stuff. It's why I got scared by the time slip episode. Like concepts disturb me. I'm very easily disturbed. It's a rough life I live.
One last note on this that is just interesting in how this story has gotten to spread, because like if you look up Urkhammer, Iowa, there's articles on it all over the fucking place now. It all can be traced back to that one website, but then it started to get reprinted and rewritten up places, specifically citing here a place called Mysterious Universe, which is a place Kyle and I talk about a lot because it just is like a pretty low bar of entry to start writing articles for the site thing that just covers like user submitted stories of stuff. As far as I can tell, it's very loose on their like editorial, I guess. So it got basically the whole thing got reprinted without the whole like, oh, this is probably a fictional thing that someone just sent to me, and it just started to spread various places because this is a concept that I think we've talked about a little bit on episodes you've been around, but a thing that happens so much when I'm trying to do research, the biggest thing that takes a long time doing research is that there are probably 150 different sites with names like that, like Mysterious Universe or some like, Paranormal State or fucking whatever, that will just take the same text from some website, make like one little alteration to it, if that, like even just whole cloth
Copy-paste.
copy pasting it onto another website. And so it's just straight up like aggregators. And so many of the websites, you have to dig so fucking far to find a second source for like anything. And so I think that seems to be what caused, and that's a phenomenon that's much more popular now because people set up websites and try to like get ad revenue and shit.
Yeah, that probably happens in all realms of any kind of special interest now with everything.
Yeah. So I think that is largely responsible for why most of these things didn't come about until like 2015 to 2017, because that I think kind of tracks with the timeline of when that type of site became so pervasive.
Yeah.
So people just take the one thing, they don't fact check anything, don't do any research, slap it onto their website, and then it looks like something is all over the internet when it just can all be traced back to one thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I mentioned, there's one that's a straight up creepypasta, a town called Ashley, Kansas. It deals with like a fucking Lovecraftian horror attacking some children under the guise of their mother and stuff. But it gets linked in the same, like, despite the fact that it is literally an entry on the creepypasta like database.
Yeah.
It gets linked on the same articles that are like, oh yeah, Doveland, Wisconsin, and Roanoke, and Ashley, Kansas.
You know this real thing that happened? A fucking octopus ate a kid. Yeah.
And there's also one named Langville, Montana, which supposedly once appeared on Google Maps but doesn't anymore, which is actually seemingly part of either, I don't know if it ever actually existed or not, but a marketing campaign for the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot.
Great.
They offhandedly mentioned Langville, Montana in like one line of dialogue as a previous case for somebody, and it now exists side by side with these other things online. So if you ever see Langville, Montana, that one is a Ghostbusters thing.
That's just from Ghostbusters, everybody. I'm going to start picking one thing in every episode that I'm on It Gets Weird and say, like, that happened to my buddy Harold once.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with that.
So like,
in this case,
Langville, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to start doing that with shit.
That works.
No, yeah, that one's real.
Your buddy Harold will have lived quite an interesting life if you do that a lot, if you do that bit pretty regularly, which is great.
What's the Joker review? What's the actual name from that? Eric.
Yep.
Harold is from the classic Tumblr post from the movie Carol.
Oh, I fully assumed you were mentioning Harold Ramis.
Oh, Harold Ramis. That's another reason I probably thought of it. But do you know the Carol post on Tumblr?
Oh yeah.
I went to see Carol in the theater,
Harold?
and there was an old couple, and the husband said something about why are they kissing, and the older woman went, "They're lesbians, Harold."
Yeah, that works.
That, and this happened to my buddy Eric once. They're like sister posts.
Yeah. Now, to wrap this episode up with one more kind of topic, I want to talk about one of the explanations for these disappearing towns. If you don't think they're just urban legends,
I don't.
So, do you? For that, then, Jules, I'm going to explain to you what quantum experience is and how this relates to the Mandela effect.
Okay. Is this going to creep me out?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think so. I just keep waiting to get creeped out because that time slips episode really freaked me out, dude.
This one is, I think, far enough removed from something that could ever happen to you that it's not going to creep you out. But we'll see.
So much of how we were talking on the time slips episode was like, if this happened to you.
Yeah.
And I just started really putting myself in the shoes to the point that I scared myself. And we also were recording late at night. I was alone in the room that I was in. There was a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Today, it's a nice, pleasant, like warm spring day. We're having a nice day. Yeah. Anyway.
So the Mandela effect, how this relates to that. So the overall Mandela effect thing, converging universes or timelines or whatever that you get put in from one to another where things are slightly different and different than you remember. And there's kind of a subsection of the Mandela effect conspiracy where people are starting to talk about these instances of Mandela effect happening as quantum experiences, like they're experiences that shifted on the quantum spectrum or whatever the fuck, so that they did exist and now they don't. Yeah, exactly. They go through quantum. This
episode is sponsored by Marvel.
That's what we call it when something goes from like either existing to non-existing or non-existing to existing, and in the Mandela effect they go through quantum mania.
We call that quantum mania.
Yeah.
It's also what I call something when it goes from being like really good to sucking ass and you're not interested in it anymore.
Yeah.
That's a quantum mania.
Oh, I thought that was a phase 4. So
you know when something has like a really good cast and you wish it was better than it was, but it just isn't? That's a quantum mania.
Oh, okay.
You know when something is like your special interest and you collect a bunch of merchandise about it and you watch every movie and you go to like the midnight release, but then a few years later it just like sucks and it's completely soulless and there's nothing interesting about it anymore, and all of the actors who are in it are just like fucking phoning it in because like why would you bother?
And you know what they'd say if that were the case? You might be in a quantum mania.
Hey, you might be a quantum mania. Oh man. Marvel eat my ass.
When's Jeff Foxworthy gonna be in a fucking?
Yeah, you know what? He should be. And if it was gonna be one, it would be an Ant-Man movie.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was trying to think, I was trying to think if there's any like rural superheroes, and there are, but they're all like such low brow fucking whatever. It doesn't matter. So I was made aware
there is a timeline somewhere.
Yeah.
Where the fucking blue collar comedy tour stayed as popular as it was in the early 2000s, and they were still like the big thing, and they did a like scary movie style spoof movie of Marvel. There is a universe.
Oh my God.
Where like fucking Larry the Cable Guy was Captain America and like was farting or whatever while he threw the shield. Like that exists on another plane of existence.
In the Battle of New York in Avengers, he raises his shield and says, "Let's go get her done."
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That exists. That happened.
I hate that you put this image in my brain. But first, before we move on, we have to cast all of the members of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
Well,
as
Ron
Avengers.
White is Iron Man.
Okay.
Larry the Cable Guy is Captain America.
Yeah.
Jeff Foxworthy is who?
Thor?
Thor, maybe. I could see him being
Hawkeye.
Hulk.
Okay, Hulk.
Bruce Banner. He could be Bruce Banner. Who's the other one? There's 4 main ones, right? Main guys.
Bill Engvall.
Bill Engvall. Oh,
Bill Engvall's Hulk because he's kind of scrawny, and so that's Banner, and then
Bill Engvall is definitely Hulk. Yeah. You're right. But so who's Jeff Foxworthy then?
I guess Thor, Hawkeye.
I don't know.
This doesn't work very well.
No, he could be Ant-Man, I guess.
The only reason we have not Bill Engvall, fucking Ron White as Iron Man is because he drinks on stage.
Yeah, that was why. I mean, is it that? Does that make me cheap that I went for that immediately?
It'll probably work out really well, and I think that
just
movie
picture him in the Iron Man suit, like they call me Tater Salad.
Fuck off.
You love it.
Oh man. I just want to talk about shift points, Jules.
I bet you fucking do. Too bad you had me on the episode.
True.
So we're gonna talk about the fucking Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
The Blue Collar Avengers.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me.
If they were doing what they did now, they'd have like a tour billboard that was like them in the Avengers costumes.
Now, but in this fucking timeline, it's more likely that we get an NFT collection of the fucking Blue Collar Comedy Tour as superheroes.
That's true.
Oh man,
that's true.
So, the concept of shift points.
Okay.
This is a thing that I found out about. It's kind of it's a subsection of the Mandela Effect conspiracy that basically looks at, instead of these things happening, just kind of at random due to like the chaos of the quantum realm, whatever the fuck. These things are triggered effectively by important or major events in history. And a lot of people, by a lot of people, I mean people that have websites about the Mandela Effect and try to catalog all this shit. So it's not a lot of people, but they put in the work. So I have to give them that. Link a lot of the Mandela Effect things and the rise of that as of that feeling of quantum events to these major shift points in history. and that kind of lines up with the whole these things started appearing on like at like 2015 to 2017. Because here is a timeline of major shift points that I found since this millennium in America. Well, I guess in the world, because this is like the whole world and stuff. But these are all much like every fucking thing that comes around. It's very America centric. So
Of course.
that's fun.
We're on America's internet. Okay.
Yeah. So of course the big ones in 2000 and 2001 you have Y2K and 9/11.
The big ones.
Yeah. In 2004 and 2005, you have the Southeast Asian earthquake and tsunami, along with Hurricane Katrina. 2010 and 11, you have the Haiti earthquake, Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the Chile earthquake, Japan earthquake and tsunami, and the Fukushima disaster. 2012 and 13, Hurricane Sandy and the end of the Mayan calendar. And then all of this leads to, in 2015 and 16, you get a possible full dimensional jump. And this is where the buildup of all of those events led to this massive shift where we're just in a whole new fucking universe.
I mean, what's some really fucked up shit that happened in 2016?
I know.
If only there was something I could think of that fucking ruined my life in 2016.
Oh, we're gonna talk about the psychoanalyst of this stuff here in just a second, because there's a whole thing that I read too much about this stuff, and it's one of those things that, because I'm coming to it from the outside, there's such an obvious thing that's behind this.
Yeah.
And other people just are too far into it to notice it. But then, there's the shift has now existed. And there are people that try to link this to like that major shift has somehow is tied to the fact that Hollywood is out of ideas and is doing a lot of reboots, because we're basically rebooting old things, not just properties, but like our universe is rebooting pre-millennium other stuff. And so that's why like these major Mandela effect shifts are happening.
Okay.
Does it make any sense? Fucking no. I don't. That part made no sense to me, but it's a thing that gets talked about a lot in here, and maybe I'll talk about that again in some episode.
How about like if a major like corporation was making a series of films that had like 4 phases and they just kept doing sequels about the same characters
it's
over and
exactly
over?
like that. Yeah.
That might be a Quantum Mania.
So the reason I wanted to point out the obvious thing of all of this, I was reading some of the sites that I was looking at with the quantum experiences and the shift points and everything, and a bunch of people trace the time that the world stopped feeling right.
Mm-hmm.
The time when it started to feel like you were experiencing things from another dimension or were different than how you remembered it, seems to track pretty heavily with getting the time you got into adulthood. Like these people were like posting, like I'm in my like 30s now, and it really feels like nothing's been the same since like the 2000 like
when I was a kid and everything was simpler and I didn't have to think about anything, life feels different now than then.
Exactly. It like they were pointing out things like there's this place that's like in a lot of ways it's the financial capital of Europe, and it's just a place where a lot of like the finances of the continent flow through. And people are like, no, this place didn't exist when I was a kid. This came to be in like 2011 or whatever. And it's like, no, you just didn't know the financial capital of Europe when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Why would you?
And so I was looking at this, and it just is so like
taxes that didn't exist when I was 12. I have some news for you, buddy. Your dad was doing them.
Yeah. I was looking at this, and the whole shift points thing can really just be summed up as like, the world's kind of falling apart a little bit, and it feels like things are getting crazy. And instead of just reckoning with the fact that like a lot of these, basically the American system is getting really fucked right now, it's actually the fact that we're converging with alternate universes.
It's interesting too, because there are some things that I have said to my mom or other people who are like our parents' age,
Mm-hmm.
like, did you feel this way when you were turning 30, that like the world was fucking ending and there was like this crushing weight on you that everything was so fucked up? is that like a thing of like a coming of age thing, or is that like a things are really fucked up right now thing? And a lot of people are like, no, it's worse now. It's worse now than when I turned 30. And so I think there's an element of that too, that like we have the internet and that encourages you to get into these kinds of mindsets where you get on a forum with other people who feel the same way as you do. So you put yourself in a little bubble where you create your own reality that's more comforting than the one that is actually happening. And shit is more fucked now.
Yeah.
Shit's not only is it more fucked, we have more access to the information about how fucked it is, because it might have been this fucked in the 80s too, and people just didn't know because they didn't have it at their fingertips.
Yep.
And they couldn't get as informed as we are constantly being informed and misinformed constantly, just like it's being blasted at our eyeballs all the time. And so I feel like that lends itself to stuff
it
like
really
this.
does. I feel like that is so common in these conspiracies that are based around this kind of unreality, this kind of like the reality is shifting or
it's
changing.
It's easier
or
to believe than
it's
the fucked up reality that you're in.
A spectacular evil is much more comforting than a benign one.
Yeah.
And I think that
it's so hard to grapple with how fucked up reality is. It's I don't blame people who reach for stuff like this. I really don't, because like I would much rather wake up and not have to think about how fucked shit is.
Yeah.
Shit is fucked, you guys.
Man, comedy podcast.
Hey, you want me to quantify it? Let's just get back into that.
Yeah, we'll get back.
Were we doing cars? Let's bring cars into it. How can we fold Lightning McQueen into this scenario? Oh, Tow Mater! He's literally in it. What am I talking about? Larry the Cable Guy fucking voices Tow Mater. Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. So now we need Tow Mater with the Captain America shield in his fucking the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
Is there an Avenger who has like a big gap in his teeth like that? Tow Mater has those.
Oh
big
yeah.
teeth.
Are any buck-teethed Avengers?
Buck-teeth Avengers. So now we have to add David Letterman is an Avenger. Which Avenger would he be? I guess he'd have to be Iron Man because like he's so sarcastic. And that's what we love about Iron Man.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna bring whoever RDJ is in Oppenheimer into this somehow. I'm just trying to think of more fucked up shit to reference.
Yeah.
3 tickets to the Barbie movie, please. Is this funny yet?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Good.
And it's burned enough time that now we can go to the big question.
Okay, great.
So
I hope it has something to do with Bill Engvall.
I mean, you can choose how to answer it however you'd like. There may be a way to get him in on this. And my big question this week is, since there seems to be quite a bit of merch popping up on sites for these disappeared, probably fictional towns, I want to come up with a local sports team and mascot to make merchandise of for one of these forgotten towns so that we can get in on that action.
You know what's very odd is I was just earlier trying to remember the name of my Little League team, and I couldn't remember it.
Okay.
I wish I could have. But like, it's weird that you're asking me to do this right now because I was like really intensely envisioning my Little League jersey, and I can't remember the name of the team. I see the name of my town, which I won't say. The name of the town where I was born and grew up is like written on it, and then the team name, and I can't remember it. Yeah. So maybe it doesn't exist.
Maybe
it never existed.
You were born in Urkhammer, Iowa.
I was born in Urkhammer, and I was on the Urkhammer Stumps. Okay, so that's the name of the team.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's
okay.
The Stumps. The Stumps.
So what would this I need you to describe what this mascot would look like for me.
Oh my god. Wait, so okay, so
because I see 2 directions for that.
Okay.
The first is some form of stump or tree.
Of course. I pictured a cartoon stump that has like a little branch and a nose that looks like a branch coming out and the big cartoon eyes. That's what I immediately pictured.
Okay.
But that I feel like would be hard to keep the proportions of it stump-like while a person is in it, because a person would be too tall to have it look satisfying.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
The other option that first thought, best thought was an axe.
Yeah.
So you're
I could even see like just like a lumberjack. You could have like a big kind of lumberjack guy, and he carries around an axe, and they're the stumps, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The stumps.
That kind of works. Yeah.
I like it.
This
so
makes
you have like a fucking like the brawny mascot, basically.
Yeah. So we're really getting into the fact that I guess Urkhammer in our world was like a fucking a forestry town. It was a
Yeah.
lumberjack town.
Yeah.
So it must have existed on like some logging river or something in
For
Iowa.
sure.
Yeah,
sure.
that works. Um,
And it's sponsored by the mill, by the lumber mill
yeah.
on the back. Did you have a Little League team where you had T-shirts that said the name of a local business and everything? Because that's what I was trying to remember. I used to wear one all the time. I had like a T-shirt for my team and then my jersey.
Yeah.
And I used to wear the T-shirt all the time.
Mine wasn't sponsored by anybody. It was there was an athletics like group organization or whatever that kind of ran the whole league. And so we just had like, there was always animal names, and you just had like, everyone had the same shirt, but they were different colors depending on the team. So like when my team was the Tigers, it was an orange shirt with
Is this
black
a
writing
class
and
thing?
stuff.
Is that like a Richard area
I don't
thing?
know.
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea why I even think that immediately. But like to me, there's something where like I would think if we were a summer camp movie or something, like the team that's sponsored by the local business would be like the scrappy, like underdog, and you would be like the bougie kids who have the matching T-shirts, and you're always a tiger or whatever, and you come in your polished shoes and shit, and I would be showing up, and we'd all have our different size T-shirts, and we'd be like, I don't know.
And you would have to like, anytime you hit a home run in baseball, you would have to yell cheesy bread, woo, you know?
Is that a thing? What are you saying?
I'm in this for this joke to work, you have to imagine you're sponsored by a pizza place.
Oh, it's a pizza place in your mind.
And contractually, you have to like advertise.
You have
the
to
pizza
say
place.
the thing, okay? Because I was sponsored by like an awning company.
Oh,
so
that's
like
not
I
fun.
wasn't picturing a restaurant. It was like just like the name of a place.
In fucking movies, it's always like the local pizzeria
it is.
or deli
It's
or
often,
whatever the fuck.
Yeah. No, mine was like literally awnings or something.
Okay. That's no fun.
I know.
What was your team name? If it was just the
that's
name
what I'm
of the
saying.
business?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay.
No, but we had a team name.
Okay.
It was like the whatever, my town, which for some reason I've decided I won't say. I keep wanting to say
Urkhammer, Iowa.
My Urkhammer, it said Urkhammer, and then underneath it said the name of the team, and I can't remember. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
I would assume it's the same name now, right? I mean, like team names, like local sports teams' names don't change a ton, do they? It's like, because it's usually related to the school or the town.
Yeah.
And it's like a name, and then the next year it's the same team name.
I mean, for the way that I did it with all my like, I played soccer mostly, and then like t-ball when I was a really little kid. Team names were just like rotated out every year, and it was just like sometimes it would be.
Mine was like through the school district though.
Oh, okay.
So like it was like the kind of thing where like I played on a team with the same kids that I went to school with.
Gotcha.
We were like all in the area. That was like the local little league team, and it was like the coach at the school was like the gym teacher at the like I'm saying the coach on the team was my gym teacher.
Okay. So I think what might be happening here is I think I grew up in a larger town than you did.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean. I
I
think it also is just like you're just a little bougier than me.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. But like
I think your school was probably nicer than mine. I mean, you've seen where I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very small town.
Yeah. And so we had enough, because we were a large enough town, we had a big enough thing that like we had like 12 teams in our league, and they were all from here, and you would just fight. You would play each other.
You'd fight.
Yeah, we would fight each other. And only one team could reign supreme.
The Urkhammer stumps.
Yeah.
I really like this.
The Urkhammer stumps. See, I that means that I have to probably come up with like a Doveland one, right? Because
Sure.
like the Doveland is like, we cannot do the Doves. The Doves is too
No,
fucking
okay, so
simple.
I have the Urkhammer stumps, and we're the underdogs.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with the rich kid team that's
Okay.
from Doveland.
Let's see. What's some identifying? That's the fun thing. It's like there's not like, oh yeah, Doveland was known for its fucking furring industry or some shit. The thing that, as far as the internet's concerned, Doveland is most known for fucking missing children. So
Yeah.
I think that like the Doveland Amber Alerts is a little dark.
I was literally about to say exactly that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that our minds went to the exact same place. But I mean, I was also thinking though, like the Dublin Mariners or some shit like that.
Because you can't, yeah, we could tie it to like the submarines and stuff, and the what about the Dublin Elves?
The elves.
Yeah, the Dublin.
You got to leave the F.
Yeah, you got to leave the F.
But you can have an elf as the guy, but you're the elves.
But he has to be like the elf has to be represented in like almost like Man in Black type gear. So you're an elf, but you're also like secret-y. 'Cause maybe
Sure.
maybe that's a hat on a hat. But
No, I like it.
okay. So yeah, we so who wins the Little League game between the Urkhammer, Stumps, and the Doveland elves?
Excuse me?
Elves.
It's obviously the Stumps.
Fair.
Obviously the Stumps. No, we do the Wet Hot American Summer thing. That will always be funnier.
Yeah.
That he shows up and he goes, we kind of feel like it's played out. You remember that?
Yeah.
That is one of the like undersung bits from Wet Hot American Summer. I feel like everybody has a favorite Wet Hot American Summer joke.
Yeah.
What comes into your head immediately when I say that? I love everything from that movie, but like what's the one that you immediately picture?
The stuff that I picture is I love the like going to town montage.
Of course, going to town.
But my favorite joke in it might be the foot race, like the van versus running foot race at the end, or I guess that's kind of in the middle, because it's when Ken Marino is like speeding back to town, and they come across like a little bale of hay in the middle of the road.
Yeah, it's when Joe Latrulio is chasing him on the motorcycle at that point. And he like screeches up next to the bale of hay, like, it stopped me. It's just one bale of hay in the middle of the road.
And then they both continue on foot. Like it's fucking.
And it's obviously stunt doubles. You love an obvious stunt double.
I do.
Which so do the fucking the guys from the state, the Wet Hot American Summer guys. They love an obvious stunt double. I picture them talking about what time they'll meet up when they meet up 10 years from now. I quote that
by
all the
then
time.
we'll be adults, so you know, why don't we make it our business?
How about we say 9:30 and you make it your business to be here by 9:30? I love that. But I feel like they're doing the Little League thing where they're the kind of scrappy underdog team, and there's the rich camp, and Showalter is their coach, and he's giving them a like kind of he's trying to rile them up, and the kid says, "Don't you feel like this is just kind of played out? Like maybe we should just go." And he goes and tells the bus pulls up, and he goes and tells them like,
"No, I think
mind.
we'll just not do this." Yeah.
And the bus just pulls away. It's so funny.
Oh, sorry. My favorite joke in Wet Hot American Summer is the reveal that none of the radio equipment is plugged in.
That's a good one. That kid, the whole bit with him is just great.
He's fantastic. Yeah. So that's. I guess that's kind of the end of this one. That's so we took another delve into unreality, which I guess is what we do when you're the co-host.
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, welcome to the world of disappearing towns.
Yeah, this is one I've never heard of.
Yeah,
never heard of that as a thing. So it's cool to know like that's just yet another thing where a bunch of people, unbeknownst to each other, came up with a similar thing. I like phenomena like that.
Yeah. That
like a bunch of people were like, what if there was a town?
Yeah. And it just seems to be propagated by like clickbait websites and like the weirdness of Google's search algorithm seem to be the reason these things propagate. It's interesting to me.
I really wish there was a way to actually get back to the feeling of early internet. I know that I know that this is a thing because it's like that was when I was growing up, so it's more important to me. But I do miss that feeling of like you only discovered stuff like that through some weird website that was kind of hard to find or a weird email forward. Yeah. Like I feel like stuff like that feeling doesn't exist anymore. Now you can subscribe to some asshole's Substack about fucking missing towns, and I guess they'll email you, but like fuck that.
I straight up was looking at someone's Substack while trying to do research for another thing.
Yeah.
And it was a Substack about UFO flaps, which is interesting. Like I think that stuff's cool, but
Substacks are great, but I'm just saying it's not that there's not that rich feeling that you used to get on the internet.
I've really been getting into in a similar kind of thing that I feel like there's a similar energy to it. The like lost media groups, you know, that are like, I remember.
Should we be plugging Internet Experience Deluxe or whatever? What's Kyle's show? Another Patreon. Donate $2 and you can listen to Kyle's bonus episode where he delves into weird old internet
the world
shit.
Of weird goes online.
That's right.
That's not his thing. But that's what I'm going to say his thing is.
You should tell him to start saying that.
Because the thing Kyle can definitely do, and is seriously deliver cheesy lines.
Yeah.
That is kryptonite for Kyle.
He's physically incapable.
He's incapable.
Whereas you love to do a radio jockey thing like that. You do that a lot.
Yeah.
Let's get weird.
So I guess that'll bring us to some business. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/It Gets Weird Podcast. We're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird. We're probably there. We also have a Patreon with a $1, $2, and $5 tier. $1 tier is just a tip. $2 tier, you get bonus content every other week. And the $5 tier, you get bonus content literally every week, along with, on all tiers, you get access to our Discord and the mainline episodes 2 days early.
I believe last week I said we would do an episode if someone donated $1.
Yeah.
And then I realized if they donate $1, they don't get access to the episode that we would do if they donated that $1. So I guess donate $2 and I'll still do that. There's no deadline on that. If you donate $2 and you leave a note on Patreon, we will record an episode about, what was it called?
I forget what it's actually called, but it's a Rodney Asher short documentary thing about things that scared, like movies and media that scared people as children.
Nile and I will do a mini episode on Patreon if even one person donates $2 and asks for that.
Yeah.
We will do it.
Yeah.
But you have to donate the $2. But the Patreon is great. I highly recommend getting it on the Patreon.
If you have run out of mainline episodes, there's hundreds of hours of shit on the Patreon that you don't have access to otherwise. So,
and there also is, I'm about to do my plug, which is I am the host of a podcast called The Outside Dive, which is a weekly topical wrestling podcast, professional wrestling. We mostly talk about All Elite Wrestling, but we sometimes get into other stuff, especially around the high holidays of WWE. We talk about some other stuff. We get into Cody Rhodes losing at WrestleMania and stuff like that. Nile is my co-host, and that podcast started as a bonus show on this podcast's Patreon.
Yep.
Because we just loved AEW and loved talking about it so much, we started recording our conversations. Kyle is on some of those old It Gets Wrestling episodes, and I really love it. And if you are interested in wrestling, even if you aren't as into it right now, you could start watching AEW. Dynamite is on Wednesday nights at 8, and we talk about every episode. We post new episodes on Monday nights.
Yeah. So go and check those out. There's like 90-something episodes of that at this point. I've done a lot of fucking podcasts.
Our episode 100 is actually going to be around an AEW pay-per-view. So
oh, is it?
We'll probably have a big blowout for 100
cool.
at the end of May.
So we're going to get ready for like a fucking 4-hour episode.
Our longest episode right now is 3 hours.
Is it?
They're average 90 minutes, but we have like a 3-hour, 2-minute episode. I was just looking. We just sit and talk about wrestling for as long as it takes to be done. Like there's no time limit.
So yeah, I guess that's it for plugs. Oh yeah, Kyle streams on Twitch sometimes. Twitch.tv/IGW podcast, I think. Yeah. So go ahead and check all that stuff out. Thank you all for listening to the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile.
And I have been Jules.
Peace.